Work-life balance. Is this possible or is it just a myth? Well, we're going to talk about it in today's episode. I'm your host, Steve Kiles. You're listening to the Loan Officer Leadership podcast powered by the Mortgage Marketing Animals. Carl White, one of the things that we get asked so many times is, how do I get it all done in a right amount of time to still have time with my family? Is work-life balance possible? Come on, man. Is it the
So I'm
chupacabra?
so I'm gonna muck it up a little bit.
Let's do it. Muck it up.
All right, so I'm gonna muck it up.
See, and you kept it PG. Muck it up.
Well, muck it up. So you know what mucking is?
I don't. No.
Okay, so mucking it's a real thing. It's
Yeah.
like when you go into a barn and you have horses and you need to put new hay down. The
Yeah.
floor has the hay on it,
Yeah.
to help absorb stuff, and cleaning that out is called mucking. So
There we
you
go.
didn't, dude. You're a Texan, and
No,
you
but
didn't
we
know.
got chickens, and so my wife does all the shavings, so it's probably the
So
same
that
thing.
would
I
be
bet you'd
mucking.
call it mucking.
That
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
muck,
Yeah.
but with horses,
Got
it's
it.
called mucking. So anyway,
There you go.
all
Okay.
right. So
Work-life balance. Is it possible or a myth?
I'm gonna muck this up a little bit.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is work and life balance. That leaves two things. What you're really saying is work, personal time balance.
Hmm.
It's it's actually much worse than that.
Okay.
It's not two, it's really four and really five different
Okay.
things. So we have family.
Yep.
Well, family for some of us actually has two components: a mate, and for some of us, kids.
There you go.
So that's really two. So I have, for me and you, we have a spouse, we have kids.
Yep.
So I've got, which is not one. That's two different things, brother. It for sure is. Yeah, you spend nothing but time with the wife and not the kids, you're gonna have a problem. And
Yep.
if you spend nothing but time with the kids and never
Not with the
never
wife,
never
you're gonna
never
have a
your
problem.
mate,
Yeah.
you got a problem. Yeah,
And then
you
if
got
you
a
got
problem.
boys and girls, they got to be different times.
You know,
So it's even
that and
more.
that's true
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah.
yeah, this gets much more complicated. Even though I have to tell you that when the kids see us love our mate,
Yeah.
that's part of that is given balance to the kids,
Mm.
because I think children want to know that mom and dad, or dad and mom, or dad and dad and mom and mom, like whatever that situation is, kids want to know that the mates love and respect each other. I think that's a real important thing, right? All right. So we have wife, or wrong. We have mates and kids. All right. And then when we talk about work, that's number three. And
Yep.
when we're talking about work, we're also talking about wealth. That's
Yeah.
really one. So when we say
Yeah.
work, it's really creation of our wealth is what we're doing. Uh, so that's three. Number four is our health.
Yep.
And then five, for me and you anyway, is our maker, right?
Mm.
Our
Yep.
spiritual life.
Yep.
So we really have five different things that we're balancing here. It's mate, children, work slash wealth, health, and our maker.
Mm.
So it's really five things. So it's much worse than just when we say work life. Life is
Pretty complex. There's a lot
it,
to
it,
it.
it had some other
Yeah.
things. And let me clarify something here. So a lot of people, when they talk about the work thing, they go, you know what? I want to leave a legacy. I want to make a difference. And you know what? I thought about this one for a long time, man. And I came to the conclusion, and this is not a negative statement. It is the way it is, that look, 100 years from now, nobody's going to know my name, your name, or anybody else on this call, right? That everybody we know will have died.
Yeah.
And just like if I say, hey, who's your grandparent on your mother's side from 100 years ago? You don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe somebody did a genealogy search, but we're not going to know. So the idea that, well, we're going to put a dent in the universe, and we're leaving a legacy, that we're leaving this thing behind so that when we die, this thing is left behind. That's probably a little bit more of a myth. And I'm not being cynical here.
Yeah.
This is a recent revelation that I came to. And so really, when we're talking about the work balance is what is that wealth that we need to create that we're good. And I'm not saying we shouldn't try to leave a legacy, right? I'm not saying that at all.
Sure.
But what
Sure.
I'm saying is, um, I think the main focus is on creating the wealth that myself and the lovely Mrs. White can have a very pleasant ride. And we support some charities, we support some missions, we support different things. I'm not going to list them all
Yeah.
here because I don't want to get off on the wrong track here. But so making enough money that we're okay.
Hmm.
We're having the time of our lives. We're helping people along the way. And as far as like affecting Earth 100 years from now, uh, you know, that might be a little egotistical grandiosity that very few people, Henry Ford, very few, Thomas Edison, very few people, Abraham Lincoln, are going to have a massive effect for hundreds of years,
Hundreds
right?
of years. Yep.
So it goes back now to spouse, kids, wealth slash work, health, and our maker,
Mm.
right? Or your spiritual beliefs, whatever that is. And I think what happens with these, Steve, is I think we go through seasons.
Mm. That's good.
And I think at a different season, like in the winter, it's snowing, so we put on snow tires. It's a different focus, right? We go grab coats and hats and mittens and our sleds and our skis and hot chocolate, right? It's a different season, right? In the summertime, it's bathing suits and swimming. It's a different season. We do different activities. And I think our life is the same way. So, like right now, your kids are young.
Yep.
And so your oldest is 12, your youngest is 6.
Hmm.
You have a 9-year-old in between, if I remember right.
Yep.
And so you're a different season. So on your season, it's a little bit more with the kids,
Hmm.
right? For me, all of my children are grown up. My youngest is what, 31, right? Which is unbelievable for me to think of, right? So my youngest is 31. So I still spend time with my kids. I just got back. I just got back from spending time with one of them in North Carolina, and I'm getting ready to go to Myrtle Beach here in 2 weeks to spend a week with one of the others. And so my day-to-day routine, although we talk on the phone
Yeah.
and we do our occasional Zoom, my day-to-day routine is not focused on the children anymore. And so for me at my season, it's on my health
Hmm.
and on my mate,
Hmm.
right? So my wealth is already established where I've got enough, right? And so at my age, which is I'm in my, hard to say this, my mid 60s now, that health becomes like, oh boy, this is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And not that it shouldn't be a big deal in your 20s and 30s also. And you don't want to ignore it over the years, or when you get to
Yeah.
60, you might not make 64, right?
Hmm.
Or you get there and your body's so wore out and tore up that it's, you know, not salvageable. So obviously you don't want to do that. But I think, in the early, like in the somebody in their 30s, the kids and work is gets a little bit more of the focus.
Hmm.
And so I think we go through these seasons of these things. So I heard a guy talking not too long ago, a buddy of mine. He's saying, "Hey, Carl, I get your 5 things." He said, "My argument would be pick two,
Okay.
pick two, and focus on those this season."
Mm.
And I thought about that, and I thought I like that. I'd probably stretch it and say three.
Okay.
Because for me, the spirituality always is a focus. Because when that's not in check, everything's messed up.
Yeah.
Like that's and but the same could be said with if my health is not in check,
Yep.
everything's messed up. And I guess same thing. If I got a lost child, that can mess everything up. If me and the Mrs. or me and the Mister, you and your mate are going through some really hard times, that's no good either.
Yeah.
So, but I think we go through these. I think the secret is not to give anyone more than it's due.
Mm.
And because
Hey,
if I
so
if I spent,
what does somebody do? Like, Carl, what about somebody, I was on the phone with somebody earlier, Dana, great loan officer. And she just said, I'm just working too much. Like her whole thing was, I don't even like work-life balance. I know she was just walking through, my natural tendency is I'm going all in on work and that's it. What do you say to that? How do we help a loan officer who says, I mean, I hear you say the 5 areas, but what do I practically do to not be so dominated by work? Because you and I both know this industry is so intoxicated with loan officers doing everything. And what would somebody do to start to correct that? How do they do that? Take a practical step.
Well, I think the first thing is to redefine your role as a loan officer as an originator, which
Mm,
means you originate the loan.
yeah,
Because we're not called loan closers,
there you go.
called loan originators. And
Mm,
so when you understand that your job is to bring in the new business
yeah.
and not to chase pay stubs,
Mm.
that
Chase
that
insurance and order
yeah,
appraisals
yeah.
and schedule
But
closings.
here's the thing we got to be careful of. Sometimes we find ourselves, and I'm using air quotes here, chasing pay stubs for the purpose of escaping doing the prospecting.
Mm,
Because when I'm chasing the pay stubs, I'm not going to get rejected. When I
mm,
prospect, you're going to get
prospect.
rejected.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
There's a day doesn't go by that I'm not rejected by
Yeah.
somebody. Now,
Yeah.
the other good news is a day doesn't go by that somebody doesn't say, Carl,
Yes.
this is, I mean, they say something nice. Carl,
Yeah.
this was amazing. Thank you so much. You helped us out. Right. Every day, literally every day I hear that. And I'm grateful for each and every one. But every day somebody goes, no, thank you. We're going this direction. Right.
Mm,
And so I think you have to understand that that we're not filling our day with clutter to as a as
avoid.
a as a
Yeah.
protective
That's it.
mechanism
Yeah.
to escape the rejection part.
Yeah.
And so somebody that says they're working too much, I know in the periods of my life where I found myself doing that, it was um, sometimes it was easier to get an attaboy at work than it was at
Mm,
home.
mm,
Right, just being honest here, right?
mm,
That home, three small kids, man, it was tough.
mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes I escape that, not one of my more prouder moments, but I escape that by going to work. And I'm grateful that I identified that early in my fatherhood to fix that. Right.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be careful that we're not doing that, escape, trying to escape something from home. And then I'd look at my calendar and look to see everything that's on my calendar. Is this, is this, uh, is this task going to bring in leads or not?
Mm,
Does this happen before the phone rings or after? And if it happens
ooh,
after the phone rings, that's something that somebody else can help me with. If it happens
mhm,
before the phone rings, then that might be something I would spend my time with. But then the other thing is we go, and how many phone calls am I expecting this week because of this activity? So it
mm,
goes, and we always kind of poke fun at this. If I'm spending time on my logo, how many phone calls am I expecting that to generate? Well, probably not. And I'm not saying not to have a cool logo, right? I'm not saying that, but you
sure.
get the idea. And we
Yeah.
kind of overly pick on that because it's a good example. But if I'm spending my time on getting ready to get ready, that's a very dangerous, very, very dangerous thing to do. And I can find myself working all the time, and that will continue because the activity I'm filling my schedule with doesn't move the needle.
That's
And
right.
so I have to do ever more of that. And if I
Mm-hmm.
look at it, come to find out, 10 minutes of my day is actually spent, if that, prospecting. Because, one of our favorite things when we do our live events, Steve, is you and I will say, hey, what's the number one thing that makes you most your money? Write that down, and they write it
Sure.
down. And now, how many hours, minutes, if any, did you spend doing that activity this past 7 days? And
Yeah.
the average answer is zero.
Yeah. It's
So
shocking.
my calendar is busy,
Yeah.
but am I busy creating
Doing the right
creative
activity.
avoidance?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
Hey, and
So
one thing I think about too that I see that red marker on that calendar. And if somebody's struggling with a work-life balance, I think part of it is you got to have a start time and an end time. And you got to
period.
make sure that even on Saturdays and Sundays, um, We go through this in our live events as well. You draw out a calendar and say, how do you take Saturday and Sunday off? Literally, you mark a red line through it and you're off. And what's amazing is you'll work differently knowing that you're not working Saturday or Sunday. You work different when you have a start time and an end time every day because you're fighting to get everything done in that time frame. And here's what will happen is if you have a very hard start time and end time, and you say I didn't get to it all, then you've got to look at what did I do that didn't move the needle, what you're talking about. And you'll find there are things that are busy. Like I'll give you an example. Somebody asked me yesterday, Carl, he said, "Hey, would you go to meetings and meet realtors knowing what you know today?" And I just said no. Like if I've got limited time and I get a qualified list of agents versus going to an event at a National Association of Realtors event, I have no idea who's qualified. I'm going to drive an hour there, spend 2 hours at the event, hopefully meet qualified agents, drive an hour back. I've given up 4 hours versus I could do this other activity that every single person I talk to, I know is qualified. So what it does is when you have a start time and an end time, you work differently because it's non-negotiable to work past it because family's a priority, because your kids are a priority, because insert in whatever it is you're working to. Hey, and I love this too. I think there are also seasons you're going to work a little bit more because it's a natural season. And then there's seasons you work a little bit less. And that's something to just be aware of. When your
Yeah.
kids are little smaller, you're probably working less than when they're older. And I think it's important to look at that and make those adjustments and don't be so rigid that you're not flexible to make sure that you're doing I always say it like this: you want the ideal life and lifestyle. We want to do the things we love with the people that we love while making a greater difference and having time to spend it with the people that matter most. And so you've just got to build, we call it a livable calendar. But I think it'll help have a start, stop time, evaluate what's moving the needle. If it's not, take it off and ask this: who can do that? Who on the team can do that? Who
Mm.
can chase the pay stub?
And if I don't have a team member,
Yeah.
what would this person look like? And
Yep.
what's my next step to putting
Yeah.
that person, to finding that person and having them on my team, even if it's
I-
part time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and even it goes back to this. I was even thinking about it whenever you just said it. If I didn't have enough volume to have a full time team member, how much would I give up to be able to have it? Because
Mhm.
here's what I know: if I've got somebody doing the busy work and I'm selling, I'd rather take a little bit less comp to be able to have the freedom because I'm going to get more in simply by having great help. So there's a
Well,
lot of solutions.
and I tell you something else too. If you think getting help is expensive, I've heard you ought to try a divorce.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
very expensive on many, not just dollars and cents, but emotionally. That'll kick you. At the very best case scenario,
Yeah.
it's a butt kicker, right? I mean,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
just it's
Yeah.
just, and I get it. People go through things, right? And we're not judging. I get it, right? I totally get it.
Hey,
Um,
and listen, Carl, here's what I want to do. As we're sitting here talking about it, I would love if you need help and you say, man, I've got business coming in. I'm not quite sure how to move things around. Maybe I need a team member. I'm not quite sure who that person would be, but here's what I know. I'm literally burning the candle at both ends. I've got business coming in. I want to stay prospecting. Hey, jump into my calendar. This will be a link that goes to my personal calendar. I'd love to meet with you. Let me show you how to set up your team, what the people could do on that team. Go to meetupwithsteve.com, meetupwithsteve.com. And here's what I'll do. I'll just show them, Carl, what I'm doing here, like what our team structure is and something that you could implement exactly where you're at. What could a little bit of help look like to remove
mm,
the busy work and stay focused on the selling activity? So go to meetupwithsteve.com. I'll give it to you. We'll spend 30 minutes together on a Zoom call. I'll walk you through what I'm doing here with some of our team members and how it's helping them do more in less time and have that work-life balance because it's possible. It's not a myth. You got to make sure you got structure, process, and clarity around what moves the needle the most for you. So go to meetupwithsteve.com. Good
and you'll
stuff.
just map out a week in
Yeah,
the
I'll
life
I'll
of the
walk it
top
out and
producer.
yeah,
Yeah,
100%. And I'll
good
do
stuff.
the time as well as what the team looks like, and we'll give it to you. And I'd be happy to do that myself. So go to meetupwithsteve.com. Hey, and remember this: anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Just get started. See ya.